Welcome to Meet Me for Coffee. I'm your host once again, Tanya D. And today's guest I've had on before. He's an intuitive cardiologist, my friend, as well as a doctor, Nitin Bhatnagar. Welcome, Nitin. How are you doing?
Hi, how are you? Good.
So today's show, I'm going to have Nitin go over a few things. Number one, Nitin just finished a fast, and I want him to talk about fasting and different levels and different kinds of fasting. So go ahead, Nitin. Let's share some of your fasting information.
Sure. So, fasting has actually been around for a very long period of time. We've been doing it since we were in the caveman era. If you think about it, we would go and hunt an animal, we would eat an animal, and then we would not eat anything for months. So that we would automatically be in a fasting state. So this is actually, from an evolutionary perspective, it is very natural to us. Our cells understand what fasting is all about. In our modern times, we've been so used to constantly eating because we've got so much of easy access to food, which eventually leads to addiction. And various hormones regulate that. We end up forgetting about the natural ability for our body to heal itself through fasting. So there are a couple of different kinds of fasting. If we want to go over that first, there's the intermittent fasting that is hitting the craze of the internet, and there is the time release fasting, or rather time restricted fasting. Depending upon whether you eat or whether you're holding back on food, time restricted or time release. Or there's even the continuous fasting. Mm-hmm. I've done all versions of them, so I'll give you a little bit about both. So when you talk about, you've got your time restricted eating, all you're really doing is eating within a certain period of time. So some people will do, 14 hours and 12 hours of fasting and within a 14-hour window of eating, or vice versa. Some will do the more common 16-8, so 16 hours of fasting and 8 hours within window to eat. And some will do 18 hours and will do 6 hours of eating. So you can do that, or you can even just do 24 hours of fasting in a week. Oh. Then there are people who will do a 72-hour fast during a week, or vary it depending upon whatever you want to do. So intermittent fasting is really a combination of your time-restricted eating and a longer period of fast. So if you're just doing restricted fasting, time-restricted fasting, that's not intermittent fasting. That's just time-restricted fasting. But if you add on and go beyond, let's say, a 24-hour period to 36 to 48 to 72, now you're going to be calling it intermittent fasting. Mm-hmm. Continuous fasting is when you go even beyond 72 hours. You do 5 days of continuous, or 6, 7, 8 days. I ended up doing recently a 12-day fast, and when you're doing the fasting, it is water only. Now, when you look at other forms of fasting, there are those who will say, if you do intermittent fasting, in the time window when you are fasting, you can have caffeine, but black, but no milk or any additives or sugars and so on. The whole purpose of doing intermittent fasting is, you're trying to reset hormones and have a cleaner life, cleaner health, reduce inflammation, improve your stress levels, improve your cardiovascular health. So when someone says, well, if I'm going to be doing it for a diet and exercise and weight loss, well, I can have vodka because that doesn't have calories per se. That's not really part of the concept of fasting, because you're trying to cause and help with cell regeneration. So the alcohol is not going to help with that. So I'm saying that up front because I just want it to be clear, because some people think that fasting means, hey, I can have the alcohol, I can have the caffeine. The whole purpose is to help you with your addictions, which addiction can be anything. Now, when you talk about in your fasting period, there are other kinds of fasting where they say, well, we'll just calorie restrict during the fasting period. So those are other kinds of fasting periods. But in other time periods, so it's the 5 and 2 period, where it's 5 days of proper eating and 2 days you're going to restrict your calories. Those are other modalities. So there are a wide variety of modalities of that.
Absolutely. I mean, I do probably Oh, days where, I generally have at least one healthy meal in the middle of the day. I'm really not a breakfast eater. But then, after a workout, I kind of have to balance around my workouts. What I've noticed is if I eat, it has to be 2+ hours before a workout because it just doesn't work for my body. So it's just kind of an awareness there. And I've also done the 2-week water only fasting as well. And I'm actually glad you said what you did about resetting along with your hormones and whatnot, because a lot of people, when you fast, they have a different mindset that gets in the way of that particular. And I think it's just a great, healthier way to recalibrate your hormones without taking that magic little pill.
Right. To that effect, the first thing one would do, in my suggestion, is to write down, if you're going to do any lifestyle modification, whether it is, I'm going to stop alcohol, I'm going to stop smoking, I'm going to stop eating this, whatever it is, I would say first write down your why. And I write down at least about 50 reasons as to why you're going to do it. Because you've got to have the mind have a neural link and connection between your right and left brain, from your logical to your emotional centers, and be able to connect the two and have a powerful why. I always say this, is that if you have a powerful why, your hows will take care of themselves. So if you have a good enough why as to why you're going to do it, and you're not thinking it's going to be a fad, you're going to be able to push through, and you're going to be able to last and do the fast, versus start it off and realize, well, this was really not something that I really want to do in the first place, and therefore fall off the wagon. And then you start adding guilt, shame, and blame to yourself that, oh, I couldn't do this, I'm not good enough, and so on. So that kind of defeats the whole purpose of doing the fast in the first place. So if your whys are powerful enough, you will be able to do what it is that you choose to do. So if that's the case, and you say, well, listen, I'm going to give up meat through my fasting, I'm going to give up alcohol through my fasting, I want to give up smoking, whatever the case is, or I want to improve my hormones, I want to keep things regulated. Well, if your whys, if you have a good enough set of whys, and I'm not talking about just like a 5 and a 6, this really needs to, for example, for me, before I started my whys, I wrote down, before I began my fast, I wrote down 118 whys of why I'm doing this. And I was absolutely certain, with full presence, that I am going to be able to do this. And this is not something of a wish or a whimsy or a fantasy. Because what ends up happening also is that if you start the fast and you start derailing, you start creating the opposite guilt, but if you're creating a fantasy of what you want to do, you will also then end up creating its opposite as well.
Absolutely. I think whys on many levels are important for the whys. So in that, the fasting, I've heard on different platforms that fasting is actually a great thing to do during this earthly situation that we have going on globally. Can you kind of talk to that a little bit?
Of course. So let's just step back for 1 second. What exactly does fasting do? So if you think about, when you have your pleasure centers in your mind, right, in your body, in your brain, I mean. So we are constantly either seeking and trying to find something, or we're trying to avoid pain, right? So we've got the pleasure and pain simultaneously going on. And in the midbrain, you've got your striatum, and in your striatum, you've got a lot of these dopamine receptors. And if you are balanced, when you have your dopamine, the dopamine is a very valid hormone, because when you're trying to accomplish something hard, you want the reward mechanism to be able to say, and feedback to say, yes, I accomplished something good, now I can move to the next challenge. But the problem is that when our psychology is out of balance, our physiology takes over trying to show us where our psychology is out of balance, we start having more of this reward mechanism that keeps coming into effect, and we want more and more and more, and we try to go back and experience our primal centers. So food, intoxication, sex, these are some of our more primal events. We do this with screen time. We have the same issue with in relationships, or if we text somebody and we don't get the message back immediately, right? It's our dopamine, because we're in a psychological imbalance. Why is all this important? Is because when you're doing your fasting, you actually get your hormones back to center again. So your dopamine, your leptin, your sympathetic drive, your parasympathetic drive, your testosterone, your estrogen, your glucose, all these various hormones, your insulin levels, your glycogen levels, your glucagon levels, all these hormones end up coming back into balance. And when they do, you're going to be able to see things in your life in a far more balanced way, and therefore take effect. Now, how does this affect to our current situation with, I'm presuming you're referring to the COVID-19 situation. So at the moment, it helps with removing our stress. So when our hormones are in balance, our stress levels come down. When our stress levels come down, we are able to start repairing our cells, right from our gut cells, our brain cells, our joint cells, every cell, including the heart, to be able to then finally build our immune system. So if you're balanced, you're in a eustress, not a distress, you're going to end up improving your immunity. And that's how the whole concept of fasting is going to really make a difference, is that you're building your immunity. So even if you go out there and not socially distance, and you are meeting people, if your immunity is strong, there's really no issue.
So I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I don't know about the chaos in your village, but in my village, it's this overstock of toilet paper and water, which now, that was last week's chaos. Now some people are trying to return all this overabundance of toilet paper, and they're not being allowed. But I think they don't understand that in the balance, they created unorganized chaos on their chaos, like it just hit the behaviors. So that, that totally makes sense. Like the polarities and the cause and the effect and the fear, right?
Right. So it's very interesting you're talking about this, and I'll be writing about this in my own blogs as well. But what's interesting is that because the fact that we have, and this is my view on this, mass consciousness has actually created this coronavirus and this whole pandemic. And I'll go boldly and say that up front, that we have created this. And why would I say that? So when we have our own fears and we have not taken care of our fears, all right, we are constantly, that's the internal vector. We have not taken care of our own fears. We are always looking outward to find our savior, some savior who will take care of our financial problems. Some savior will take care of our home problems. Some mortgage company will take care of our home. Somebody else will take care of our government. Somebody else. You're looking outwards. Well, because you're now creating a fantasy, the coronavirus externally is now coming in to push you back in to go face your own fears. So we as a mass consciousness have created this entire paradigm for ourselves.
Yeah. I call it the shadow effect. So, I know that like the epigenetics and the ancestral lineage, this is like in my organized chaos, this came from lifetimes before this lifetime. And I find that people are revisiting the past life to dissipate that inner fear they've been carrying within their lineage for time and space. Again, my views are different as well. I understand that. So can you hit on some illnesses as well? Do you want to share some insight on disease and illness? I mean, I feel like they're intercorrelated, but again, I exactly hear what you say. We've created this chaos, not even recognizing that we've done it because it's in that other stream of consciousness.
Right. So, it's a great question. So when you look at illness and you look at wellness, right, what do they have in common? And so let's have a play on words. It's ILLNESS, and then you've got wellness, WELLNESS, right?
Right.
You've got the I and you've got the we. If you are self-centered and remain in self flagellation and not seeing the grander picture, you create illness. If you see the grander picture of you and me and us together, the we, you create the wellness. Make sense?
Absolutely makes sense.
So then we're constantly having this balance of illness and wellness. So as I started off talking about when the psychology goes out of balance, our physiology takes over and starts demonstrating and manifest disease and illness. And so illness is actually a feedback mechanism to show us where our psychology is out of balance. Now, if we ignore our physiology and ignore the disease, then what's going to happen is that our sociology comes in, trying to help us to come back into center. You'll say, hey, you're maybe you're not looking too good, or hey, are you okay, or whatnot. You're part of my sociology. Friends and family, etc. If you still ignore that, then your theology comes into effect. And by your theology, I'm talking about not the whole universe comes into effect and giving you circumstances to find and get you back in the center and realize, all right, where did I stray off my target? Mm-hmm. Where am I not in alignment with myself? Which is actually exactly what's going on right now. Mass consciousness has ignored its psychology, physiology, sociology, and now the universe is having to come back in and say, listen, folks, you are out of balance. How are we going to get you back in balance? And how does this all stem back into the heart is because the heart is extremely powerful organ in that it is very intuitive. It creates electromagnetic fields. It is able to connect you to your own divine self, not just the organ itself, but also its potency from a metaphysical standpoint. It also is able to, you've heard of, precognition, or like my intuition said so, etc., right? Well, these are just various terms that we've been talking about for so long, but in actuality, we've been able to correlate that the heart is able to divine what's going to happen seconds before it's actually going to happen, because it's an energetic field that is created around the heart, and that same energetic field now is connected to the rest of the quantum field around the universe. So if you start understanding the theory of cell biology, not from the original Darwinian theory, where you've got the nucleus. If you remember the nucleus concept, where the nucleus is the brain center, right? And that runs everything and controls all parts of the cell. Well, now we've discovered that even if you take the nucleus out, you can still run the cell. So now if you look at it from a quantum biology standpoint, it is the cytoplasm inside that is constantly helping and regulating. And by helping and regulating is controlling all aspects of the cell, not just the one aspect of the cell. And therefore, it's also connecting to all other cells. So now we're going from a Darwinian competitive theory of evolution to a quantum biology of a cooperative idea. So we are a lot more cooperative than we are competitive. We are competitive when we need to be, but we are also cooperative when we need to be. But you need to have both. But we're a lot more linked with everything else in that regard.
So around me, my chaos field isn't so chaotic. Mostly, I think, because I am not so chaotic. I'm like the still point for my village. So I'm guessing the best way to shift this conundrum we're going through is this is my sense. I feel like I need to push out that field further out in a resonance and maybe grab some of the chaos and kind of bring it back in order to shove it back out. How does
Possibly.
that sound?
If that works for you, perhaps. What I'm doing is staying in my state of gratitude and unconditional love, and therefore staying in my inspired state and doing what is most important in my highest value goal, which is teaching and writing and healing and health. So as I continue to stay in that state and that frequency, the energy starts to radiate outwards. And I do see your point when I have my kids go out of whack. I try as best I can to bring them into my calm and not add myself into their chaos. So I can see your analogy applying very well. But from a grand perspective, I'm wondering whether staying in a state of unconditional love and gratitude by having a balanced mindset and then taking action steps to go beyond the fear and then radiating it outwards and resonating that same energy outwards to one person, two people, the village, city, town, country, state, and globe.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think we're both saying the same thing. I just speak another language, actually, because I have to maintain my heart-centered self, but I know if somebody's texting me or messaging me, like I'm reading their words, and then I have to kind of dissect the wording and find the emotion. So I've always said, okay, so where's the emotion coming from? What's the conversation it wants to share with you? And it goes back to the frequency you're frequenting, and then holding space for that frequency above the chaos, the love, the gratitude, the peace, the clarity, even the joy, right?
Yes.
Those joy molecules have a huge, a bubbling effect, different, even though it's not seen physically, the eyes, there's still that bubbling going on around every body. And I know, when I was in Costco last week, and I didn't recognize the chaos because I wasn't participating at that moment, but when I recognized the chaos and then finally got out of the store and just feeling all the fear, I was happy to be outside because I could dissipate it faster and more fluidly.
Yep.
To come back to my center. So it's kind of like holding, space and time in that consciousness thread that, I can go in and grab something and give it to somebody else, whether it's even just a smile, like, hey, you're going to be okay. Like,
yep.
Absolutely.
It was interesting you said that just yesterday I was driving early in the morning and there was a neighbor who was walking past along with their dog and they looked very stressed. So I just as the stop sign came on, I just paused for a second. I opened my window and I've never met these people before. And I looked at them. I said, "Well, it's a really good thing that the corona is not being infected by the dogs." And that person, she just like stopped and started burst out laughing. So I don't know whether that made her day, but there's always something small that you can do along the way.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, is there anything else you'd like to share with my audience?
Fasting is an amazing opportunity to be able to rechange and resync. It's not just for your mind. It's not just for your personal health and your hormones. But from a cardiovascular perspective, I would tell you is that you've got the four major bad cardiovascular actors are your diabetes, your cholesterol, weight, and a high blood pressure. And all of these do come down with fasting. Not only because by fasting you're not eating all the junk and the bad foods, but even after a period of fasting, you actually start feeling better and your executive center sort of comes online and you start being able to see, do I want to eat this? And then you start asking yourself and giving yourself permission to have your body answer that question and not your mind answer that question. So if there's a packet of chips there, you just jump in and eat the packet of chips. You actually have more stability of mind and you are able to move more control and determine as to, not a case of, do I need this? Do I want this? But start looking at food as an integral part of your DNA. Because whatever you eat, you're going to be putting it towards your DNA. Think of food as medicine.
Absolutely.
So if you look at the food and you realize this donut, and you ask your body, and your body says no, and then you ask yourself, well, why am I craving the donut? And then you can start breaking the fears, because invariably it's a sugar response for some other dopamine out of balance issue.
Absolutely. Interestingly enough, my brother-in-law is in the hospital right now because his sugar levels were at 700 and something. Of course, diabetes, right? And my sister, they're both horrible eaters. And it's like, your body has been trying to communicate with you. You need to do something different. They're more sugar driven, soda pop, that kind of lifestyle, which is fine. But it's interesting that you said that, because our bodies, if we listen to their language, they're going to show us when something needs to change. It's just most people don't listen to that unseen message until, whatever it is, your diabetes, your heart, something needs to change, whatever it is, a little bit, a lot, to organize that chaos. Whole other story. But thanks for hitting on that.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring about diabetes, because diabetes is also, you get high blood sugars. And the reason also is because you are in your self-righteous and you're in your state of pride. But the reason why you're going into that is because, remember, there's always a diametric opposite going on. And the diametric opposite to that is guilt and shame. So somebody who's got a lot of guilt and shame and holding on, their blood glucose levels may be on the lower side, but in order to keep their blood glucose levels up, because the other opposite has to show itself up, therefore, to counterbalance their guilt and shame, pride comes in. But when this is too low, this starts getting higher, and now you've got this whole opposite platform happening, and the imbalance, therefore sugars start to rise. You don't appreciate the sweetness of your life in energy medicine, right? So that's that field. But from another angle of this is the blood sugars go up, the more guilt and shame you're holding, and you become more self-righteous, more prideful, and so on, and blood sugars steadily escalate accordingly.
Yeah, totally. And the whole energy medicine thing and every aspect, like you said, the endocrines, I mean, they're all connected invariably in different degrees and dimensions. But yeah, absolutely. And they make fun of me because I'm a pretty green eater, and I have one of my blood cholesterols is out of whack, but it's not so terribly. So I just switched my eating. I eat more like avocados because I'm not into a pill taker, and the niacin made me crazy. So I utilized food as my medicine. Just like, oh, okay, I got to shift this, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. Once again, do you want to share one more item before I close our show?
The more present you are, especially with this whole COVID-19 thing going on, there's a lot of fear mongering going on, and you have to do a lot of research to be able to understand what's going on, and in terms of who's really benefiting from this whole experience. Now, you can either start playing on the fears and keep worrying about what's going to happen. Are we going to have martial law? Are they going to prevent us from doing this and that and so on? Or you can start taking a look and seeing what the benefits are in your life. And you start seeing what the benefits are of this whole COVID experience. You start bringing down your fears step by step by step. And when you start to break that down, you start looking and saying, well, why did I have this fear in the first place? What am I actually fearful of? And the more specific you get to be able to break that down, the more you're going to be able to realize that you just like everybody else, has just not realized their own fears, that we're now creating an external fear to make us be more respondent to our own internal fears. It's a beautiful feedback mechanism. You look at it on a global scale. The more we understand what's going on with us, the more we'll understand what's going on in the globe. So what I would say is, you can follow all the usual CDC's rules and regs of social distancing, washing your hands for 20 seconds at a time, which I'm kind of surprised that we've not been doing that for eons already. But if you actually, I did a little poll and I asked various people, and we timed them, and we discovered that on average people are doing less than 10 seconds of hand washing. So the 20-second hand washing is not something new and, oh my God, we've come up with this new technology that we need to wash our hands for 20 seconds. No, we should have been doing this, since we ever got soap. So,
oh boy, right?
And also, maintain exercise. Just because you're inside the house doesn't mean you can't exercise. Just because you're inside the house, you're not going anywhere, doesn't mean you can't stay hydrated. And start connecting with your family members, connecting with other people too. But spend some more time off the screen and being within yourself. And meditation, gratitude journaling, all of these are going to be very beneficial to be able to improve your overall lifestyle. We're being given an awesome opportunity right now to just settle in and figure out what's going on with ourselves. And we may not get another chance like this after a while, because the moment this ends, everyone's going to go running back to their worlds, and then when they're running back outside, they're going to forget about the inside. But if you've maintained your inside world, your ease in transition back into the outside world is going to be a lot better. And if you do fast, I think it's a very great benefit, especially in this COVID-19 era, because the fact that it will boost your immune system.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Dr. Nitin Bhatnagar, for joining me for Meet Me for Coffee. I hope to have you again on the future. You're fascinating, and I love listening to your inspiration and your knowledge. So thank you, my friends and guests, for showing up today. If you have a question, please comment on my channel. And if you'd like to be on my show as well, let me know there in the comments as well. And I will see you next time. Ashe.